and he paid, I don't remember, it was $3,500 or $3,500, but it was right there with the front loader, and that was back in '54. So this thing was a workhorse. It replaced a bunch of other things, plus I think it replaced some horses that they had then. And it was did all the orchard work all the time we had it. Then in 1970, instead of me buying a car in high school, I bought a tractor. And that's where that came. That came into play and in 70 or 71. And that was our next step up, because this is 24 horsepower. We went up to a diesel at about 40 horsepower, which was a huge difference. And we were doing hay at that time, starting to, so it was a big difference. And back then, that went up to about $7,500 when we bought that back in the early 70s. Then we progress over to the tractor I use today. Most of the work is done with the large one. Now this tractor, because of the hay, and of course having hay fever doesn't help matters any. So that's where this one came into play with the cab. Normally the front loader's not on it, and because I'm doing hay, this is usually off. And this was bought in '99, and the progression of cost of tractors without the front loader was about $35,000. And this front loader was about $6,500, so it cost about as much as that tractor. Price of equipment for farming today is a little bit out of range. And that wasn't new. This tractor had some hours on it, had 100 hours on it. Might as well have been new, but that's the only way to get them. You have to get them so there's some price knockdown. So this one is 75 horsepower. So a big difference. It can run all the hay equipment, where these couldn't. We had to have self-propelled baler and different things. So then we move on into the process of hay. This is a swather. What this does is it opens up so it's offset out, and this does all the cutting. This turns. It's got a sickle bar mower blade that sets back and forth. And if you can see, there's some wheels in the back. There's a conditioner back there that spin. These little rubber wheels. And so as it's cutting, it sucks the hay back, it sucks the grass in, it's cut, and it's pushed back through those rollers. And those rollers squeeze the hay. And they're a chevron roller, so they crimp it about every 4 inches. They'll squeeze it flat. So it lets the moisture come out of the stalk faster. Instead of just cutting it, then you'd have to, if it's a big stalk, it takes a long time to dry. So it crimps it so the moisture will come out faster, so it dries quicker. It also puts it into a windrow. There's got 2 wings back there. It pushes it back, and you probably drive up the valley or any place, or even maybe by here sometime, and you see hay laying in a windrow, and that's where that's come from. So it lays in a windrow. So that's the first step of cutting, and it's going to lay in the windrow about, depending on the weather, 3 or 4 days. Then this is the rake, and this also opens up to be wider. This, when you've got 2 windrows and they're about 16 feet apart, this actually will reach both windrows. So you go down between them, and these spin in opposite directions, this direction. They will pick up the hay and they'll bring it back into one, and they'll fluff it up. So what was on the bottom is now on the top, and it's fluffed up. They're standing up really well, so the air can circulate, so you have no wet spots in it. In turn, speeds up that drying process, so you don't have wet spots that you can have in a clump of grass or something. So that, once it's raked, it's a day. It's usually 1 day. It lays in after that, and then it's time to bale it. And this does all that hard work that you see, the finished product that you might have been sitting on over there. This brings up the hay, it pulls it over, and there's a piston that goes back that cuts it and smashes it into a bale form that you would recognize. And as it goes out the back, there's pressure on it that holds it so you can make them heavier. And there's the knotting system that when it gets a measuring device, when it gets to a certain length, it ties the knot. The string goes up automatically and it ties it. And that just happens in the process of driving, as long as everything's working. When it's not, then that's a whole other scenario. But they just pop out the other end, and that's kind of an easy way of saying it, but the conditions have to be right. You have to have the right moisture and everything to it. From that point, you've got bales laying on edge, because they'll come out, flip over, and lay on edge in the whole field. That's where this thing comes in. This picks them up. And this one's a little hard to visualize, but the bales are laying on edge. As you're driving along, the bale would come into here. There's a lever in the cab that you push on. It turns this on. It pulls the bale straight up like this, and it flops over. So the bales comes up and they flop over. When the third bale hits in here, this table spins up. I mean, this all happens fast, and lays 3 bales right across here. That will happen time after time until you get to the last time it goes up. There's 15 bales on this table. It pushes that bar. This table will go straight up. Of course, there's some of those come up here to hold it. This will go straight up, and there'll be 15 bales standing up. You will do that until you've got 105 bales on this. And if all goes well, you never touch one.
How often does that happen?
Rarely, but it does happen. There's sometime along the line you end up having to do something. Then once you have a full load, it's transported across to wherever we're storing it, and this will tip up. And as long as you're going against another stack of something to push up against, you put up, and you'll leave 104, 105 bales standing straight up in a stack, untouched, and off to the next load.